This is a Ned Rig. Is this big thing still a Ned Rig? Could this thing still be a Ned Rig too? How's it going, everyone? My name is Devon from DEBO's Fishing, and today we're going to be talking about some Ned Rigs because the new Monster Bass box for January has some, well, we'll just say some interesting lures in it, but it's also got some lures in it that I like. Now, when I was watching Jeff and Paul Burley do their unboxing on their channel, they were talking about this Ned Rig setup and the wire for it on the hook, and kind of had some comments. Go check out that video, but what I want to talk about is a few pieces of the Ned Rig to hopefully help you become more effective when you fish this. So enough talking here, let's get a closer look over there. All right, now I want to start off with the hooks on these because that's an interesting part of the Ned Rig that I don't feel like people talk about enough. Now you can see from Lunkerhunt, these are pre-rigged, 1/4 ounce head, 3-inch overall, and it's actually a really neat looking little craw bait. I like how it has the antenna there. Look at the, a little heavy of a head, so I'm going to talk about that. There's a bunch of different head shapes, types, but let's first talk about weight. So you're probably familiar with Z-Man, you know, their Ned Rig head, the mushroom style head. The Midwest Finesse Rig has been around a long time. You know, people talk about Ned Cady kind of being the founder of it. He says, no, I wasn't, but that's the reason they call it the Ned Rig. And it was really meant to be fished with as light a head as you could get away with. So like a 16th, there's these regular Ned Lock heads you can see. Well, you can see better if I take it out. That's a little 15th ounce. The plastic slides up on that lead keep there and holds it on. Z-Man has since also come out with the Ned Locks EWG. So after you put the plastic on there, that piece of lead keeps your plastic held on. You can kind of skin hook the hook there into the plastic and make this completely weedless. For me, game changer for bank fishing, going as light as you can get away with an EWG head like this will save you so much over going with just a regular open hook head. Bank fishing, for me, this EWG style is almost a must. And of course, they make these in a number of different styles and shape now. This EWG head, this is from Monster Bass. I think they call it the Saber EWG. This is the one, I'll talk about this in a little bit, that I caught my biggest bass last year on. But they make some nice jig heads, and you can even make your own. Now, there's companies that come out with molds that you can actually make your own jig head. So when it comes to the head, a bunch of different choices. If you're a bank angler, this EWG style, and go as light as you can get away with. Now, DEBO, what do you mean as light as you can get away with? Well, the head size and the lure size, the overall profile is going to kind of change up your presentation. So one is fall rate. The lighter weight you have, the slower this is going to fall down. However, that's going to depend on the situation. If you have a bunch of wind, it can be hard as heck to cast a little, you know, 1/32 or 1/16 ounce jig head. Or what if there's current? You know, I was fishing the river. I had to bump up to like a 1/4 ounce, 3/16 1/4 ounce to be able to feel the bottom. Something like this, you might cast out here and it doesn't hit the bottom until it's way over there because the current's taking it. And lastly is depth. You know, if you're a bank angler fishing 4 foot of water, you know, this is nothing. That's not going to take any time. But you get on a boat and start fishing deeper, you might want a little heavier head, especially if they're not hitting it on the fall. You want that to get down there and keep that contact on the bottom. We'll talk about that more, but keep that bottom contact so you can feel it. So a different head size is going to kind of determine a number of different things. Another thing to consider with the whole jig head is the hook. A lot of the regular Ned Rigs have a pretty light wire hook, and people don't really like that. Well, these Ned Locks have a little bit stiffer hook. I do like the Ned Rigs that Monster Bass put out because they have a little bit stouter hook on it. That's this one that I'm showing you here. A little bit stouter, heavier wire hook that you can throw on like a medium power spinning rod. And Z-Man has even come out with these weedless power finesse shrooms, which have a heavier wire hook and a dual wire keeper. That was something Paul talked about when he and Burley unboxed these, is that it only has the one wire. And I agree. I think the one wire does help just a little bit. For the most part, I like to have 2 wires there because as a bank angler, when you get hung up, it's usually when this rolls over to the side. And you can see without me even barely moving that wire, that's going to get hung up in something. So the single wire, not the best. I would go with an EWG over this, but those little craws are sweet. Okay, next up we have to talk plastic. So probably everybody has heard of the 2.75 inch Z-Man Finesse TRD. It truly is a standard with people starting out with the Ned Rig. It's a nice, small, compact presentation. Oh, and did I mention it's a Laztec, so it'll last like, I don't know, 50 fish. The only thing is don't mix this with your Plastisol regular plastics or they will kind of melt and turn into a sludge. But if you feel like all you're catching is little 1-pound bass on these, which, hey, that happens some days, you could move up to something like this. This is the big TRD, so you can see there instead of that little small size, this is a little larger 4-inch, essentially stick bait or Ned Rig looking bait. If you're trying to mimic crawfish, Z-Man also has the TRD craws, one of my personal favorites. We have a lot of little crawfish around here in the Midwest. This one is an absolute killer. And one that I feel like doesn't get talked about a lot, the hula stick. So it's this smaller like stick bait deal, but on the end of it, it's got these little like tentacle deals. So as this is sitting on the bottom, if you've got a little bit of current, this is just tantalizing them, teasing them. It also pairs great with this this EWG style Ned Rig head. Okay, last up is the rod reel line combo. So on the Ned Rig, I kind of look at the Ned Rig as a finesse shaky head. So usually for a shaky head, I'll be throwing like a medium or a medium heavy rod, a little bit heavier. I want it to get down there and stay on the bottom. With a Ned Rig with a more finesse presentation, I'm talking like medium light to a medium power. This is one that I used this year, really liked. A number of different rods and reels out there, but something that you can throw one of these little tiny 16th ounce jigs on and still be able to feel it on your rod. If you throw it out and it feels like a meat stick, you can't feel this little dude, you're not doing yourself a good service. You got to find something light enough to throw this and feel it on the bottom. Now I will pair that with like a 2,000 to 3,000 size spinning reel. I like a 2,500 or 3,000 is my favorite. And I go braid to a leader. So I like to start with 10-pound braid. If it's a little bit heavier cover, you can go up to 15-pound, but I personally do not go above that. And then I tie a leader onto it. Fluorocarbon leader most of the time. If y'all can see that, 8 to 10 pound is usually my go-to. You can go lighter, you know, if you're up north, real clear water. Some people even go up to 12, but 8 or 10 I think are the key. 8 is what I use most. Okay, now that we've talked about the different head types, plastics, and all that, let's play a little Mythbusters. One thing I hear people say is Ned Rig fishing is boring. I don't want to throw out some stupid little bait and have it just sitting on the bottom and fall asleep. All right, well, I'll tell you what, the original Midwest finesse rig, you know, this little jig was not meant to be just thrown out and sat there. It's trying to get away with as light a weight as you could, and there's a number of different ways you can fish this. The original way that Ned fished this was like I guess you'd call it like a shake and swim. So he would cast it out. As it was dropping, he'd shake his rod tip. So this is falling, kind of making a movement on the way down. And then right before it would hit bottom, he would swim it back. And you could add that, you know, kind of pop in there, almost like you're fishing a swim jig. You can straight retrieve it. I know it seems dumb and silly with like a straight bait like this, but oftentimes instead of some big huge paddle tail, this little, you know, bait just swimming through the water, you know, making little motions is enough to entice bass. Now there was also the pendulum method. So as you cast it out, it hits bottom, you pick it up, you know, kind of lift your rod tip up. I'm not talking bouncing it, like actually lift it up a few feet, turn the handle a couple times, and then shake it as it falls down. So you're just really repeating that first process of bringing it up, shaking as it's falling down, bringing it up, shaking it as it's falling down. Repeat that over and over. Then we've got one of the ways to fish it that I think people really think more about is casting it out, letting it hit the bottom, and then I'll fish it just like a jig. So I will just walk it back, slow little bounces, hold it in place for a little bit, shake it, bounce it back. And I'm not talking about like dragging. I mean, you can really dead stick this. You can throw it out there, let it sit and just do nothing. Let the plastic, you know, kind of wave in the water and just barely drag it along. Kind of like summer fishing a worm, you know, just really dragging that. But it doesn't have to be that boring. You can pop it. You know, you can set it in place and kind of shake it like a drop shot. A number of different ways you can fish this. Even just casting it out, straight retrieve. As it hits the bottom, kind of bring it in and just keep it as close to the bottom as you can. A number of different ways you can do this, so don't just think that it's casted out and let it sit and fall asleep. Okay, another myth is I don't waste my time with a Ned Rig because all it catches is dinks. Now, again, going back to Ned Cady said that he would rather, you know, go out and catch 100 fish than try to fish all day for one 5-pound bite, which is kind of how I am. I just love catching fish. So if you're a beginner or somebody that's struggling for the day, there's no shame in throwing a Ned Rig. In fact, on my trip up to Minnesota last year, 2022, the largest fish I caught was on this Saber Ned Rig head from Monster Bass with the Rabid Baits plastic on the back, which is a cool little plastic that's a plastic for the front part of it, and the back part's this fox fur hair stuff on the back. It's really neat. So don't think just because it's a finesse presentation that it only catches small fish. This catches a wide range of stuff, and if you ask anybody that throws a Ned Rig a lot, you can catch all kinds of different fish on it. Now the last myth I've heard is a Ned Rig is just an adaptation of different other finesse rigs. There's other stuff that I can throw and there's no need for it. Well, let's again go back to the shaky head worm. I could throw, heck, something like this, an 8.5-inch ribbon tail. I could throw a 6 or 7-inch, trick worm on there. To me, the Ned Rig is a downsized, lighter, more finesse version of a shaky head. You know, I'm usually throwing like a 1/4 ounce head, little larger worm, medium or medium heavy spinning rod. But if you've got a little 2.75 inch finesse TRD like this, you are not going to be successful fishing it on a big, setup like that. So downsized version of a shaky head is kind of my difference from the big shaky head to a little small finesse Ned rig. You might say, well, the drop shot does the exact same thing. There's no reason for me to use a Ned rig. Well, the drop shot is nice, as much as I hate to fish it, because it keeps that bait up and suspended off the bottom. So if there's a bunch of sludge in the pond you're fishing, algae, muck, moss, it'll keep your bait up here. Is it kind of similar? Yeah, but again, the Ned rig is down on the bottom. So this is like a finesse jig or, a finesse shaky head, just a complete different, smaller version. Even if you're trying to match, smaller forage, that's kind of where this comes into play for me. Now, what if I had this exact same lure? This is the Yum Sonar Minnow. Instead of on this jig head, I had it on this Ned rig head. Does that make it a Ned? Well, that's kind of where the line blurs. There's a number of different ways you can use the Ned rig head, but this is really more meant to be with the 90-degree line tie, fished as a Demiki rig, suspended, bounced off the bottom, or if you had like a curly tail on here, you could swim it back. Though this does have the 90-degree line tie, the whole point of this finesse mushroom head is not to fall over like that. But if you have a floating plastic, and that's something we didn't even talk about yet, there's some people that think you have to have a floating plastic all the time. It does help, because if you have a floating plastic, what this head does, you can see how the front is kind of rounded, almost flat there. It helps that lure sit up and stand up and stay just like that as you're fishing it. You can see just like this Lunkerhunt, the pre-rig one that comes in the box, it's kind of rounded here. So as it floats up, it has a tendency to sit just like this, which is what you want. It's got that crawl looking all nasty, and hopefully a fish comes up and eats it. All right, folks, do me a favor, comment below. Let me know if you have a special tip for Ned rig fishing that you think will help somebody else. I love it when people comment down below, help each other out. Again, I don't know everything about this stuff. I will try to help you with what I've used in my experiences, but you might have a different way of fishing it that's made you successful, and it's cool to hear that. Also, I think the takeover idea is pretty cool. This month it was Lunkerhunt. I know they do have Z-Man and Strike King coming up soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Again, my name is Devon from DEBO's Fishing. Thank you for watching, and until next time.